So good afternoon, students. Let's go ahead with the laser diodes that we were discussing yesterday. So we have seen what are the disadvantages of the LED and why we should move towards the lasers. The lasers are highly coherent systems. The light is very directional and it is very resonant. We still have to see how that is possible, but those are the advantages of the laser. Also, the advantage of the laser will be that with distance, its light is not going to spread. Therefore, we get very directional light, right? So this is the diagram on the screen which explains the manner in which the lasers are going to work. Apart from, in addition to absorption and spontaneous emission, the lasers will also have the process of stimulated emission, wherein we are giving or supplying an external energy to an electron in the conduction band, and therefore by absorbing that energy, the electron will fall down in the to the valence band and give out two energies, one which it took to move from valence band to conduction band, and the other one to move down from conduction band towards the valence band. Therefore we get an amplification of the light, and this process is known as population inversion, through which we ensure that the carriers are more in number in the conduction band compared to that in the valence band. However, this is not a stable situation for the electrons, but this is what we require for the lasers to work. Right. So now we need to look at how this equilibrium condition is maintained, how this resonance happens, and how this amplification takes place. So today we are going to look at that. So we are going to specifically look at threshold conditions. Threshold conditions, right? So this is threshold conditions for laser, and in these conditions, the laser will give out resonant light. It will also amplify the light, right? So for the OFC system, which requires very high bandwidth, or which we expect will provide us very high bandwidth, the lasers which we use are known as injection lasers. Injection lasers, and these are semiconductor in nature. These are semiconductors. Okay, and these the characteristics which we need would be you need a response time, very high response time. We have already discussed what is the response time. The response time is the duration between the input and the output. So that response time should be less than about 1 nanosecond, very quick. Okay. Next, its spectral width. The spectral width should be about 2 nanometer. Compare this with that of LED. Okay, and we discussed that LED will give you close to 36 nanometer. It was quite spread out. So if I just draw one diagram for you, okay, over the frequency, we saw a diagram like this, where the peak wavelength was about 850 and the spread was about 36 or 40 nanometer, right? So compared to that, the spectral width in the laser should be very low, about 2 nanometer, right? The other thing that we need is it should be directional, amplified, and resonant. So with this in mind, we have different kinds of lasers, the types of lasers. There are actually different types, but the ones described in your syllabus are the two types. One is known as a Fabry-Perot, or FP in short, Fabry-Perot laser, and the other one is known as a distributed feedback laser. Distributed feedback laser, or DFB. That's what they call it. Okay, so in short, I'll write that short form also, DFB laser. Okay, so these are the two kinds of lasers which we have in your syllabus, and both the lasers will give us very high directional light, and they're much efficient compared to the LEDs, right? So we wish to see how these lasers are going to operate, and what are the equations for these lasers. Okay, So before that, I'll just show you the diagrams for them, and then we'll discuss the cavity and the resonance and those parts, right? So the Fabry-Perot laser is shown here on the left hand side. Okay, this is also available in the notes. Okay. And this Fabry-Perot laser, this is the one which is used a lot. Okay, so this Fabry-Perot laser gives very high or very directional light, and you can see that the lasing spot in the front, it is a very small spot through which the light is originating, right? So this small spot will give highly directional resonant light, and because of which for longer distance the light will remain, it will not spread out, right? So these Fabry-Perot lasers, for them the light or the laser is going to oscillate. It's going to oscillate at a frequency. Okay, we still have to do what this frequency is. Okay, so it will be resonant in nature, and this oscillator is formed by what is known as a resonant cavity, which you can see on the right hand side. This is known as a resonator cavity or a resonant cavity, and this will provide selective feedback. So let me take the diagram little on top. So this provides us selective feedback, and you can see what is happening in this diagram here. So we have what is known as the cavity. So this is the Fabry-Perot cavity, right? And we have reflecting facets. These are nothing but mirrors, reflecting mirrors. These are reflecting mirrors, and the reflection will be in the cavity. So you can see that light is going to originate from one part, and it will hit the other mirror, and it will be reflected back, and so on and so forth, and it will remain in that cavity. So you can see that light which originates, it is just going to be amplified again and again, right? And the light which comes out, these two arrows here, this one and that one, the light which is let out from these mirrors, this is going to add in phase. That means this will be constructive interference. There will also be destructive interference, but we are really not interested in that kind of interference. We want this to be constructive in nature. Okay, so this Fabry-Perot cavity or resonator will have the parallel mirrors which I explained you, and they will be separated by some distance L, right? So now let's see what could be the mathematics behind this resonating light or resonating cavity. Okay, the same will apply for the distributed feedback laser as well. Okay, so we have the diagram where the distance between the two mirrors is going to be L. Okay, so we'll start with the basic. So let me write it in points. So the first point is, we'll take an electromagnetic wave propagating along the axis. So we'll call this as E. We'll call this as E, and Z comma T, where Z is the distance that it is traveling, and T is the time. And this will be equal to, for any electromagnetic wave, the intensity, which is I, for the entire length that it is traveling, and this is going to be an exponential value, that is j omega t minus beta z, where beta is the propagation constant, which we did in module 1. This is the propagation constant. Omega is the angular frequency, and Iz, to be specific, will be the optical intensity, that is light intensity, right? So for this Fabry-Perot cavity or resonator, so for the Fabry-Perot cavity, this Iz, the optical intensity, is actually equal to the initial intensity that we have. Okay, that is I naught, and then you have e raised to, okay, so we are not deriving this equation, we are only using this equation. So it is e raised to some tau value, G of HF or H nu minus alpha H nu into Z. Okay. So here this value tau is the optical confinement factor. Alpha is the absorption factor. G is known as the gain coefficient. That is the gain of the laser, and higher is the gain, the higher will be the amplification. H nu is the photon energy, and Z is going to be the distance that this the light is going to travel. Okay. So having done that, now resonance occurs, right? Resonance occurs, or in laser terms we call this as lasing operation or lasing threshold. This occurs when I of 2L. Now to understand this I of 2L, okay, these are the two mirrors. You have M1 and M2. Okay, this is the cavity here. This is the distance L, right? So now if the light originates from mirror 1, it will hit mirror 2 and it will be reflected back to mirror 1, right? So the distance that this light is going to travel is L plus L, which is 2L. So I of 2L, right? That is going to be I of 0. That means this is the start point and this is the end point. If the start point and the end points are the same intensity, then I say that the laser is in resonance and the lasing threshold has occurred, right? So this condition is for amplitude. That means over this entire journey of L plus L distance, the intensity of the light has not reduced. It has remained the same. Right? So I0 where it started and I of 2L where it has ended, they both are having the same intensity. So for amplitude, when that occurs, we say that the lasing threshold occurs, right? For phase, if e raised to minus j 2 beta L is equal to 1, we say that the lasing has occurred, right? This value, if you write it in terms of cos and sine, this will give you 1, right? And the third point, when gain at threshold equal to total loss in cavity. That means whatever light has been lost, that the gain of the cavity has compensated for it. If they both are equal, then we say that the lasing has occurred. So mathematically, this tau into gain at threshold GTH should be equal to the loss total, right? If that occurs, then we say that the lasing has occurred. So the total loss will be compensated by the total gain of this particular threshold, right? So we'll have this as point number 1, 2, and 3, and therefore the lasing equation, that means when the laser is going to operate with highest frequency, that is given as tau GTH, and that will be equal to alpha, which is the loss, plus a gain factor, that is 1 by 2L natural log of 1 by R1 R2. Okay. So this is the equation for the lasing threshold. Okay, where R1 and R2, they are reflectivities of laser, and L will be the distance that it travels, the light travels, distance that light travels. Okay, so this will be the equation, the important equation where the lasing occurs, right? Now, for lasing to occur, an important condition, I'll just write it on the left hand side, the gain that you have, the gain of that cavity should exceed the threshold gain. right? Only then we can say that the lasing equation is going to occur, or the lasing condition is going to occur, right? So this kind of lasing equation occurs for both Fabry-Perot as well as the distributed feedback laser. So let me scroll up and show you how the distributed feedback laser looks like. You can see this on the right hand side. So this is your distributed feedback laser. So here lasing operations will be obtained by varying the refractive index, right? So you can see on this diagram that you have the active layer, you have the confinement layers, and in these active layers, which I am shading here, these active layers here, they will have a different refractive index, and because of that you will have the lasing equation, right? So on the right hand side we are showing a graph here, right? So this graph here, this is intensity versus relative wavelength. So you can see over a particular wavelength what has happened, right? So you can see that the spread in the intensity is not much, right? So this is only the maximum spread that you're getting. Compare this with that of LED, and we had a spread something like this. This was about 40 nanometer, right? Whereas the spread that we are getting is very, very low. So as the reflectivity is decreasing, when R is 0.4, R is some 3.7, like that, right? When it is decreasing, when we move here, you can see that the spread is very, very low, right? So obviously for R equal to absolutely nothing, you'll get the highest intensity, right? So that is what we do in the laser, but making this is not that easy, but theoretically this is how it works. Okay, so we need to remember when the lasing occurs and what are the conditions for the laser. One is for the amplitude, when the intensity of the total covered distance will be equal to that of the initial level. And then second is when you have e raised to minus j to beta L, right? The total phase that equals to 1. And the third is when the gain at threshold is equal to loss in the cavity, right? When the gain completely compensates for the loss. Okay. So this is the equation that we have for the lasing equation. You'll have to remember it. We are not deriving it, right? So this equation must be mentioned if anything on lasing is asked, right? So this is how the laser will operate at a particular frequency and wavelength, and we must ensure that the gain is such that it compensates for the loss. Okay, so the laser is going to operate in what is known as modes of cavity, modes of the cavity. And this in this the idea is that the optical radiation within this cavity will set up pattern of electric and magnetic fields, and these are known as modes of cavity. So a set of electric and magnetic field together will form the modes of the cavity, and each of these can be divided into two separate modes. One is known as a longitudinal modes and the other is known as the lateral modes. Okay. So the description of the longitudinal and lateral modes I have put in the notes, but I'll just mention the important points here. So longitudinal means it is going to be related to the length of the cavity, and if the length of the cavity is larger, that means the distance between the two mirrors is larger, then the more longitudinal modes will exist. uh, Lateral modes are more in the PN junction, because we use the laser as a diode, so you'll have the lateral modes. These will exist more in the PN junction. These will depend on how we prepare the side walls of the distributed feedback laser or the Fabry-Perot laser. So we are really not that much concerned with the lateral modes. We are more interested in the longitudinal modes because we are interested in the length of the cavity, right? So if you have a larger length between the cavities, then this is just going to be the you're going to have more of the longitudinal mode. Okay. There is a third kind of mode which also exists and which might be mentioned, which is known as the transverse mode. And this is associated with the electromagnetic fields, which in a direction which is perpendicular to that of the p-n junction plane. So if you have a laser which is a p-n junction here, then the modes which are perpendicular, the modes which will be perpendicular, these would be the transverse modes, right? You must be aware of the transverse fields which are orthogonal or perpendicular. So that's how we get this transverse modes, and these modes will determine what will be the characteristic of the radiation pattern, or how this output of the laser is going to look like, right? So we have seen one of the outputs where with the r, the r value, you can see that the intensity is quite high, means it is almost going to 1. So these transverse modes are going to determine how we are going to have the characteristics of the laser. So just to give you an idea, the characteristic of the laser looks something like this. This is an important concept. So we will have power. To be more specific, this will be the optical power, and this will be in milliwatt, and this will be the current. So you have power versus I, and this current is in milliampere. So the characteristic which has been found for any laser looks something like this. So this point here, from where there is a steep increase, happens after ITH, that is after the threshold current has been obtained. Until this time, there is only spontaneous emission. Till that time, there is only spontaneous emission. Once you start getting this steep rise, this happens because of stimulated emission. So once stimulated emission starts happening, obviously the conduction is going to be very, very high. The output that we get is very, very high, right? So this is known as the power current characteristics of any laser. And again, to repeat, below the threshold current, we are going to have only the spontaneous emission for the laser diode, and there is only a small increase in the power that you can see, almost like exponential, but very small. And after the threshold current, that is once the stimulated emission will start, the power is going to increase sharply, and will go beyond the lasing threshold, right? So that's how the characteristics of the lasers would look like. Okay. So we are very interested in what is known as the resonant frequency. Okay, and we want to mathematically see how and when we can reach these resonant frequencies. Okay, this is a very important characteristic, right? So we'll start with this. So at lasing threshold, that means when we are just at the point of spontaneous and stimulated emission. So at that value, if you remember, we had e raised to minus j2 beta L equal to 1. So we can write that phase as 2 beta L, and that will be equal to the value 1, which is also 2 pi, and some constant m, right? However, this beta can also be written as 2 pi m by lambda, where m here is an integer. So you could have this as 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? So now, if I want to write the value of m from this equation here, then m will be 2 beta L by 2 pi, which will be beta L by pi, which will be beta L by pi. The other way to write for m from this equation, let me write this here. The other way to write for equation 1 for m will be lambda beta divided by 2 pi. Lambda beta divided by 2 pi. So these are the two equations for m, and obviously we can equate them. So beta L by pi will be equal to lambda beta by 2 pi. So we can cancel the betas, we can cancel the pi. This implies that L should be equal to lambda by 2, or lambda should be equal to 2L. So the value of the wavelength should be the twice the distance that the light is going to cover, right? We can also write this in the form of frequency, because we know that frequency f is c by lambda, or lambda is c by f. Therefore c by f in this equation will be 2L. That implies f will be c by 2L. Okay, overall, so these are the different formats in which we can have the resonant frequencies. So overall, the integer m should be 2L, twice the distance, into the value of m, f by c. Okay, so you can have the value of m also in this format. Okay. So different equations are there, but the most important one is this: lambda is 2L. So this will give us the equations for the resonant frequency. So just to write which equations are important, uh, we'll have, or let me just start it. You'll have lambda equal to 2L as one of the important equations, because we can write this in the form of lambda, and the other one will be for m, the integer, that is 2L into mf by c. Right now, we have seen in that diagram that with the intensity, if I just roughly draw it, the intensity with the wavelength or the frequency was something like this. Okay, so this was a very small spectral width as compared to that of the LED. So if I want to calculate the spectral width gain, that what is the gain of the spectral width, then between successive modes, could be longitudinal modes, transverse modes, or lateral modes, but generally in our case this will be the longitudinal mode. So between the successive modes, the frequency separation del f should be c by 2Lm, or in terms of wavelength this should be lambda square by 2Lm, right? So this right hand side equation of lambda just comes with from the left hand side equation of delta f, right? So we can always relate delta f to delta lambda, right? So delta f is c by 2L, c by 2L, right? So all are constant. So between the two modes, we can see what is the frequency that must exist, right? So these are some important characteristics of the laser, and compared to the LEDs, the lasers are going to function much better, right? So just to compare the output characteristics of a laser with that of LED, right? So if you have uh, the output power, let me write it P out, and if you have the current here I in this direction, then for an LED, the relation looks something like this. Let me dot it. This is for an LED, whereas for the laser we have just seen, it looks something like this, and this will be ITH, right? So this LED operation is going to be because of spontaneous emission, and this laser operation where there is a steep increase is going to be because of stimulated emission. Stimulated emission. Okay, so comparing the two, again the spectral width also, if we want to compare, we can see it here. So if this is the frequency here, then the LED looks something like this, whereas the laser will just look something like this. So the outside curve is that of an LED, whereas the inside curve is that of a laser. So this spread here is about 2 nanometer, whereas that for the LED we have seen is about 40 nanometer. Right? So obviously you will prefer the laser over the LED because the spectral width is much lesser, and because of that we can use this for longer distance. Right? So we have many advantages of the laser diode. You, as we just discussed, spectral width is less. The optical power that we will get is more. So overall the efficiency will be higher, but there are problems with the laser. The laser is much costlier compared to that of an LED. Also, joining the LED laser with the fiber sometimes becomes an issue. We start getting what is known as a speckle pattern. Okay, we'll discuss this in the, when we are designing, when we are doing power budgeting later on. So we start getting what is known as a speckle pattern. Okay, and that leads to certain losses. Right? But overall, compared to the LED, the laser is always going to be the preferred, the preferred source because of the higher efficiency that it provides. Okay, so these differences between the LED and the laser, those are mentioned in the notes. It's all theoretical. We have already discussed that. So you can go ahead and read it, but these are the important ones. Mathematics wise, if I have to separate the equations which are important for us. So for the LED, these are the equations you'll need from an exam point of view. One is lambda related to energy. This we did in module 1 also. So E is that this value 1.24 comes through HC, H into C, and this will be in electron volt. Okay. Second is that of lifetime. So 1 by tau is 1 by tau R plus 1 by tau n R. We need that equation for lifetime. For the third one, we need internal quantum efficiency, which is tau by tau R. And fourth, we need the input internal power, which is eta int into this should be HCI by Q lambda. Right? So that will be the equations which we will require for the LED. In terms of the laser, we need the gain at the threshold, right? And that will be the loss alpha plus 1 by 2L, the distance that the light travels inside the cavity, natural log 1 by R1, R2, where R1 and R2 are the reflectivities of the cavity, right? So in the numerical, those will be mentioned to us. The frequency difference or the frequency width between the two modes. So I'll write it as delta nu, or for clarity, delta f. This will be C by 2Lm, right, where m is the integer. We can also rewrite this equation in terms of wavelength, delta lambda, which will be lambda square by 2Lm. So these are the equations which we'll need uh, in terms of solving any numerical for the LED and the laser. Okay, so there is actually much more to lasers, but this is what is mentioned in your syllabus in terms of the laser. So you should know what is the making of the Fabry-Perot, right? So we've discussed it will be having mirrors, cavity, and this cavity will be made up of two mirrors, and you are going to actually be using the heterojunctions, the PN junctions, which will ensure that the carriers are being confined in that cavity. Okay. The same operation occurs with the distributed feedback laser. We should know the lasing condition for the lasers. Okay, and then we should also know what happens to the amplitude, the phase, and the gain, and then finally the characteristics of the characteristics of the output power with the current. right? What happens there? So these are some of the aspects which are required for the lasers. Okay, in the exam they don't ask much more than that. Usually they will ask you the Fabry-Perot laser, and they'll ask you the lasing conditions or the differences between LED and the laser. So all that I have put in the notes, and also I have explained it to you. Uh, I'll just pick out a numerical which we can do from John Senior, the book which is specified. So let me look at that numerical. I don't have it now. Let me browse through the book and see what we can do. What we are going to do henceforth is two aspects which are known as optical receivers and optical detectors. Okay, there's a difference between the two, and we wish to see what is the difference actually between the detector and the receiver. Okay, so just to give you a glimpse, detector will be when light is going to fall on the diode, and it will convert it into the corresponding electrons, that is the current. So that will be the detector. Okay, and for this we'll be using the pin detector or the avalanche photo detector. And then you have the receiver, which will take this current, and if required it will amplify it, and if required it will also equalize it. We still have to see what this equalizer is, right? So there's a difference between the two, and it is not very simple there, because there'll be a lot of loss for the signal. So therefore we'll have to calculate the signal to noise ratio, right? So we'll look at those aspects in the optical detector. So first we'll be doing the optical detector, followed by the optical receiver. So that is the next part of this module 3. So in the coming week we should be able to finish that. Okay. So let me just look at the numerical which is mentioned in John Senior, so we can solve the same. Okay, so let me take this numerical. You can also look at the book. There are various numericals which are solved in the book. Okay, so this is a simple one. So numerical 1 says a laser contains. So let me write down. A laser contains a crystal of length 4 centimeters with refractive index of 1.78. The peak emission wavelength from the device is 0.55 micrometer. Question is, determine the number of longitudinal modes and their frequency separation. So there are two things we need to calculate here. So we need to find the number of these modes, and then we need to find what is the frequency separation there, right? So to find the number of the modes, we can directly use the equation, that is Q equal to 2NL by lambda, and we are given these values. So 2 is a constant, N is 1.78, that is the refractive index. So you have 1.78 into L. The distance which is given to us is 4 centimeters. So we have to convert it into meters. So that will be 0.04 meters divided by lambda, and lambda is also given to us, which is 0.55 micrometer. So you have 0.55 into 10 raised to negative 6, right? So This value, if you calculate, this will give you the number of longitudinal modes, and this turns out to be about 2.6 into 10 raised to 5. Okay. So this is the number of modes, and the next question which they ask us is the frequency separation. So we need to calculate delta F, and that equation we can use the direct equation, which is C divided by 2 and L. So you'll have 3 into 10 raised to 8 divided by 2 into value of n, which is given 1.78, into L, which is 0.04. Don't forget to convert centimeters into meters, okay, in whichever problem it is given, because we always express the units in terms of meters. So when we calculate this, we get about 2.1 gigahertz. So this is a simple problem on lasers. Okay, there are a few other problems. Let me collect it, and we can solve these problems in the next class. I also want to concentrate more on the signal to noise ratio at the optical receiver, because that is something that is very, very important. Uh, like I've told you, since the start, transmission is very, very simple, because you just have, what data you are going to transmit, right? So transmitting the data is not a problem, but we have seen through the sources that even during transmission, even when we know the data and we transmit with complete 100% power, because of the source itself, there is going to be some issues, right? The source itself has some sort of issues within the structure, right? So there are going to be losses within the source itself, uh, but most of the errors are going to occur when the light is going to be received and detected, because it has been traveling for a longer distance, right? So we need to accept those errors and see how those errors can be minimized, and how we can get or retrieve our transmitted signal back. So that is what we are going to see in the detectors and the receivers. Okay, so I'm going to